Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello. All right. Sounds like we're good. Welcome to the yours truly Baphomet YouTube channel and Dr. Timothy Leary High Priest Dr. Timothy Leary High Priest podcast, everyone. And today we are going into trip 5. So the previous one was just more about Timothy Leary's experience with the entheoid, with psychedelics and that kind of thing in regards to how people experience them. The big takeaway from that was one of the people who were tripping, he was not having a good time and he felt bitter and angry and all that other kind of thing. And he was sort of scaring everyone. And it's just talking about the duality of everything. And so, for example, like books or the newspaper. The newspaper can be used to inform the public and actually spread public awareness and consciousness, or it could also be used to lie, manipulate, and keep people in the dark. With entheogens, what can happen is people can come out and be like happy, loving, and others will become bitter, angry. Probably not for the whole time, but definitely that does happen. Like people's shadow sort of resurfaces. And that becomes a bit of a problem when we're talking about mental health and like love and light and that kind of thing. Because if you're not around the correct people and you have a lot of baggage, you're going to have a bad time if you have someone who hasn't been through that sort of thing or doesn't understand it. So we are now going into the 5th trip. You'll be hurled beyond the good and evil game. And it's interesting because I keep talking about the, I've been thinking about the Libra sort of juxtaposition lately. The balance, the alpha and the omega. And it's interesting because there is some different schools of thought which sort of doesn't see anything as good or bad or good or evil or light or dark in a sense. At least it's the knowledge of arbitration, but the idea that since opposites generate each other, that it's probably all the same thing. I think it's one of the most scary and unnerving mysteries, because what happens like if we live a really, really good life in the next life? Are we going to have? Are we going to be like a leper? In some like third world country with our limbs rotting off at the age of 5 or something like that. You just never know. Or is that all false and it's all based off your production and your works and karma? Well, that's what karma sort of is actually. Karma is actually generation of opposites. By doing good, you're generating evil. By doing evil, you're generating good. All right. Let's get to it, shall we? You'll be hurled beyond the good and evil game. November 1960. Guide, Susan Leary, Oracle X. Treading conduct, the creative heaven, the joyous lake. Heaven above, the lake below, the image of treading. Thus the superior man discriminates between high and low, and thereby fortifies the thinking of the people. Yeah, I guess because we still need arbitration, just like we, for the sake of measurement and that kind of thing. Because even though these opposites are a part of the same thing and they contain each other, they're still fundamentally different. All right. Where's this one go? Okay, let's begin here. The house was in a big stir of excitement when I got home. The great Halloween party was in the works. 10 teenage boys and 9 girls. The girls were going to stay over for a slumber party. They were busy stringing up orange and black ribbons, creative, overjoyous, and trying out the record player and fixing each other's hair and giggling about costumes and boys. We were all whipped up into a pre-party frenzy, and it didn't help when some parents, whom I had invited to come for a drink after the party, appeared beforehand expecting to be entertained. Gradually, the house began to fill up with sailors and tramps and clowns, pickaninnies, and Japanese geishas, and the adults assembled in the kitchen to keep out of the way. We had ordered 2 roast chickens, but no one was hungry, so we sat around the kitchen table, putting away the scotch and listening to the noise from the front rooms. My tension kept building up. No sleep the night before, of course, and the moral Donnybrook with Mike at the office, and then I had to rush out to interfere when my daughter started fighting with her brother, who had burst a girl's balloon. And when we expected the party to settle down to dancing, it turned out that the teenage boys don't dance, and the girls huddled disgustingly in the dining room near the record player while the boys started a football game in the living room, tackling any girl who got caught in the midfield without interference. Yeah. Just about at the point when the whistle should be blown, I raced out to the kitchen and broke up 3 scrimmages and got everyone assembled in the dining room and sitting down for entertainment. Except we hadn't figured out any entertainment, and there were the 20 faces waiting intently to be entertained. Yeah. Poor party preparation and that kind of thing. O'Donnell and I got all the girls into the living room and told them to hide. And then we went into the dining room and gave the boys paper bags to put over their heads and told them to hunt around blind in the living room until they found a girl and then to sit on the couch with her. Well, the game went like wildfire, and why not, since we had harnessed the strongest motive of all to make the wheels go round. For the next 15 minutes, we stood in the living room catching the lamps as they fell and umpiring the action and listening to the screams and giggles. When the last girl was caught, a big cheer went up, and then the girls said that they wanted to catch the boys, and the whole act was repeated. And when the last boy was caught, they all screamed that they wanted to try it again, and the boys went into the dining room, and we started helping the girls to hide. The atmosphere was reeking of teenage excitement, really indecent in its fervor, and when one flushed girl came up breathless and asked the name of which this wonderful new game, I told her, "Honey, the game isn't really so new. It's as old as life." And she said, "Well, we do need a name for it." And I said, "We'll think of a good name sooner or later." It's interesting he's talking about like that whole thing of like the girls and boys trying to find each other in the dark, because like that's sort of like alchemical allegory when we think about the Lover's card, or even the balance of adjustment when if you're talking about the Thoth deck. So there's that, because male and female are ultimately 2 opposites to each other, but they belong together. Just you know what, I'm not going to say it. Not yet, anyway. Now, about 4 or 5 of the girls had just blossomed within the last few months, and this didn't lower the temperature. They kept wanting to hide up on the ledges of the bookshelf and kept calling to O'Donnell and Charlie and me to help boost them up, and they kept falling back on top of us, and we were struggling to lift them up. Hold them from falling, and then the boys came in, and the screams commenced, and O'Donnell and I tottered back to the kitchen and poured a scotch and looked at each other. At 11, the boys departed, and we got the 9 girls herded upstairs to the master bedroom and set up the TV and the record player, and good nights all around, and back to the kitchen. The 3 of us, Charlie and O'Donnell and I, were sitting around the kitchen table, catching our breath, and then the parade began. The girls kept coming down for hot chocolate and cookies and milk and ice cream. The girls were still flushed and wound up and couldn't leave the kitchen alone. There was one long-legged girl in particular who was wearing pink underpants and a green sweater, and she stood by the electric mixer waiting for a milkshake and kept pulling the sweater down over her underpants. And when she let go, the sweater snapped up, and then she pulled it down and it snapped up, and then she pulled it down and it snapped up. She made 4 trips to the kitchen, and finally I asked her in a nice way to go back up and put on her overcoat or something. Charlie and O'Donnell and I were trying to carry on a conversation, and finally I called a curfew on the girls' kitchen visits, and we went back to serious drinking. We were all 3 tired and drawn out to a fine edge, and the whiskey was relaxing, and we fell to discussing the mushrooms and the big moral struggle of the day. Good old solid Charlie was shocked and angry at the moral abuse we had taken from Mike. O'Donnell had some creative theories. That stinks, that aircon. It's not good. explaining why they always persecute us. He was taking all the blame for the informal session. The more we talked about, the more righteous I became, and the madder I got at the moralists. Yes. It's interesting, the word moralist, because I heard about that word not too long ago playing Disco Elysium. And it's basically this idea that there is some kind of universal morality, and you had to impose it on people. And of course, this leads to a lot of other kinds of death and destruction, which was the Dolores Day sort of thing. Disco Elysium, like, I tend to not promote video games anymore because I wasted my life quite a lot on them. But if there's one game that I think is sort of nourishing and productive to play fucking Disco Elysium. Fantastic. Alcohol stirs up the emotions. Alcohol. Of course, the more I agreed with O'Donnell, the more guilty I became about my resentment towards him and my blaming him for the session. So we were swinging along in the most cheerful style, and the question came up again. O'Donnell said, well, why don't we have a mushroom or two just to see what a small dose would do? Now, this sounded like a good experiment, and after all the turmoil, it seemed only just and true that we three comrades should cement our alliance with a touch of revelation. It so happened that I had the bottle in my pocket. I could feel it there every time I reached for matches. I pulled it out and we each took two. Charlie started again on his mushroom litany. They produced paradise and oriental beauty. And he was 22 years old and had never dreamed that such heavenly bliss was available to mankind. I was out of cigarettes, and when I asked Charlie for a Marlboro, he grinned and said, sure. But it will cost you a mushroom. Good enough. I poured out a pink pearl and handed it to him. When I asked for a light, he proposed the same bargain, and then I realized more clearly that power control position I had set up for myself. That moment in my office when I had taken the brown cardboard box from Mike and I put it in my file, I had changed my relationships with everyone I dealt with. They all wanted the bread of dreams, the flesh of the gods, and I was changed with the one ring of power in my pocket. I was feeling that miserable pleasure of the millionaire. There was always the ploy behind the ploy. Can I tap him for nirvana? Can I work him for a vision? There was one easy way out. Look, Charlie, let's stop all the playing around for the mushroom power. I have the ring of power, but I don't want it. I'm getting rid of it. I'm giving the precious mushroom bottle to you. Here, take it. Now you're stuck with it. Now you decide who gets them and how many and when. Let them come to you for the word. You decide, you dispense them. You take the responsibility. I handed the bottle to Charlie and laughed at his big football face. Bewildered by my move, I felt great. The load was off my shoulders. Mushrooms had taught me this much, that the artificial difference between people like age or role or prestige or control of the money or the land or the army or the mushrooms were irrelevant. I was damn glad to get rid of the role that I put myself in, holder of the Indol ring. I think it's just the general idea that if you do have power, you generally have a lot of responsibility. It doesn't mean you are necessarily going to use that power for good, but you have a lot of responsibility to take care of. And I think that's the more important thing to sort of think about. Let shame, my guide said, would wash away a greater fault than yours had been, my son. Therefore, be unburdened of your sorrow. Remember, I am always at your side. Inferno. While I was laughing, enjoying my new release, Charlie was whispering to O'Donnell, and then he began pouring them out in his hand. All of them, the whole bottle. Pink pearl cluster in his big hand, and he counted 8. A third of the total, and handed them to O'Donnell, and then he pushed 8 with his big finger into his right hand. And gave them to me and pushed his finger around, counting 6, 7, 8, and let them drop into his right hand and pop them into his mouth. And there was one left, the 25th, and he said, who gets this extra? O'Donnell said, "You carry the heaviest body weight, so you deserve it." And down it went. The last pink pearl pill, I was still holding 8 in my hand. I was again surprised at the way Charlie and O'Donnell were treating the mushrooms. They were applying the liquor ritual of this new commodity. We were hung up always on the rituals we've learned, and the old drinking pattern of bottoms up and share the supply was operating, and at this moment you were either with it or you weren't. Besides, I had given the responsibility to Charlie. I was free, so I threw the 8 pink jewels into my mouth. To speed matters up, O'Donnell suggested that we chew them. Sweet, chalky taste, and we washed them down with scotch and waited for the next scene. Oh, damn. I don't know how I'd feel about alcohol and psychedelics together. Never tried it, and I don't know. It doesn't sound wise. From all the literature I had read on the subject, we had just surpassed the world's record for psilocybin consumption. The psychiatric people had been using 8 to 10 milligrams, that is 4 to 5 pills, and I had just consumed 20 milligrams, 10 pills. And so had O'Donnell, and Charlie had wolfed down 22 milligrams. I wonder how much that is, because because it sounds like it was extracted, like the actual psilocybin, and not the full mushroom itself. So I wonder how much actual psilocybin is in the mushrooms. It'll be interesting. It hit in about 20 minutes. The waves of sensation rippling down the body and the pressure on the eardrums. There were 6 doors to the kitchen, and they were all closed. We were sealed in a bathysphere plunged down to sea bottom. The walls and ceilings glowed phosphorescent yellow. Electric vibrating color. The floor was shimmering like lemon jello. Some torn fragments of party decorations were scattered on the floor, and they sparkled, dazzling, black, shiny ebony jewels. Orange gems. Some kid had left a cardboard top hat, and Charlie tilted it on his head. His face was huge, yellow stained with deep green shadows under his eyes. He had grown in stature. The leader, the keeper of the mushrooms, tot-hatted ringmaster of the cosmic circus, chuckling, grinning impishly, walking around the kitchen joking about the fortune in jewels on the floor. Lifting his huge body in a comic tiptoe gait, the clown genius. He was the wisest and funniest person I had ever seen. O'Donnell the rebel was in a good mood too. We were 3 kitchen conspirators, 3 gods romping around a spangly paradise. There were only the 3 of us in the yellow-walled universe. No one else existed but this rolling trinity. Then over the laughter I heard a noise, a door opening upstairs and a blast of rock and roll from the record player. And then the door closing and silence. Oh yes. From 1,000 years back I remembered the party and the girls' slumber group upstairs and that other distant planet. Vague angst. Are they all right? Are they doing well 1,000,000 light years away up there? Yes, don't worry. Don't take the interstellar trip up there to see. Then suddenly, it all changes. The play had started. We are puppets in that old cosmological drama. Okay, this is interesting. Because if you look at any kind of play and drama, I think this is where it's going to talk about like the thing between good and evil. Because when we look at drama or a play or even a video game, there's usually always some kind of conflict, always some kind of adversary to overcome. And I think this is where it talks about the duality of this cosmic sort of dance that we are all engaged in. And I believe he's about to start talking about it. Okay, scene 1. I'll write that down. I'm not too sure how important that is, but whatever. A large entrance hall leading to wide sweeping stairs. On the left of the stairs, a huge oaken door closes off the dining room. On the right, an archway leading into an enormous living room, dimly lit. A small door leading into the kitchen is shut. The floor and stairs are covered with a deep pile rug. No, it is really a desert expanse of sand. A wide stream of brown sand silently runs down the stairs and flows into a shifting pool on the hallway floor. The top half of the front door is set in polished diamond, 3 feet by 5 feet, flashing intense glass light. The woodwork and closest doors are carved ivory, solid bone, smooth and cool to the touch. A light green silk covers the walls, and in the fabric are thousands of yellow diamonds in the form of fleur de lis gleaming. A golden picture frame outlines a large rectangular hole in the wall. Within the hole, about 3 feet back, sits a tall Spanish cardinal. He has a long, thin, dirty white beard which trembles as he breathes. An elongated Greco nose and deep-set eyes watching steadily, now frowning, now smiling, now turning down to the illuminated manuscript on which his hands rest and along with which his slender fingers move. His thin pillar body is covered with the red folds of an episcopal robe and his arms in yellow-white lace. He is watching, waiting, judging, preparing to render verdict. On the opposite wall there hangs a 4-foot Moroccan mosque lamp, burnished gold pierced over its entire swollen surface with filigreed lacework designs. Inside the lamp, behind orange, red, and green glass, burns 3 bulbs spilling colours over the wall, setting fire to the green silk and reflecting from the embedded flowered diamonds. The sand below the lamp is littered with piles of gems, ruby, emerald, orange diamond, which have dropped down through the latticed holes. Spotlights flood the stage with changing waves of colour. Under the sand floor is an electric generator which emits a steady hum and charges the atmosphere with high voltage currents. For centuries there is no action, only the cardinal moving his thin fingers across his scrolled pages and breathing softly. Then the kitchen door opens. Enter Charlie, pagan leader of a rebel gang. He is 9 feet tall, a mountain man with a huge meat red face, glowing with energy, grinning, chuckling over some rebel triumph. He's dancing. His black top hat is tilted. He doesn't walk. He soars in leaping, floating steps to center stage. Looking around in pleased admiration, he turns and beckons to his followers. Enter O'Donnell and Leary. They are small, wiry, happy rebels. O'Donnell's face is covered with freckled potato sacking through which his white animal teeth gleam with impish pleasure. Leary gazes around in wonder. Leader Charlie floats halfway up the stairs and sweeps his hand round in gesture. Look at the emeralds, look at the gold, look at the diamonds. Leary stands in dazed awe. O'Donnell shuffles around the stage, his shoulders butting forward. He is grinning fiercely. They left them and now it's all ours. Quick, get a paper bag and we'll scoop up all the jewels. And the sand, look, rivers of it. The owners of this house are going to be surprised to find this desert in their hallway. All laugh and laugh. What can we do with it? Tell the people who take care of the house to sweep it up and clean up all these sloppy piles of jewels scattered around. Bad housekeeping. All laugh and laugh. Sounds like a bit of a trip indeed. Tell them to put the sand into millions of hourglasses. Hourglasses? What are they for? I once heard about people who make machines to measure time. Measure time? They think they can measure time? Measure time? What crazy thing will they think of next? Why, sure. People will sell jewels to buy machines to measure them. Sell jewels? Next you'll know they'll be selling sunshine and moonlight. I am time. Can they measure me with an hourglass? All laugh and laugh. Charlie soars down from the sands and bounds around the stage. O'Donnell and Leary follow him aimlessly. The stage is so empty. Yes, big and empty. They've all gone. Where did they go? They've been doing it forever. Yes, they do, don't they? What? Do what? Come and act on the stage set for a while and then go. Why do they do it? Nobody's ever figured it out. Here we go. Leary has been standing studying the jewels dropping from the burnished moss lamp. He turns with a start. Figured what now? Out. Where they come from, why they come, where they're going. They stand all three in silence for, well, let's say 11 years. Then the cardinal sitting behind the gold frame in his rectangle cave turns and raises his left hand up to his chin so that it merges with his elongated beard. His eyes smile compassionately. He speaks in a low voice in Spanish. Dear little ones, do you really think that you can answer that riddle? Can you answer it? The Cardinal smiles. Luke moves his arm down to the book, exposing his beard, then moves it back, tugging softly at his chin. He says nothing. Yes, I can answer the riddle. There is no riddle. He's thinking of each grain in the river of sand swirling below his feet. That's right, there's no riddle. I've solved it all many times. Reproached the leader god, commanding, why do you guys worry with all this beauty? Why worry about riddles? What riddles? Exactly what riddles? We were talking about all of them and where they went to. Who? Why, all the actors that were here before. It is funny when you think about it. Where did they go? Who? Well, they were the landlords. They rented us the house and left. They think they own the set. Own the set? Own? And the land too. They think they own the land. All laugh and laugh. Sort of stop there for a bit. I think it's like the whole general part of what is being explained in here is like all the world's a stage. And no one really knows how they got on stage, why they're on stage, and how they left the stage in the first place. And that a lot of this sort of allegory is pretty much how life sort of happens. You don't really know how you got here. You don't really know why you're here. And you don't really know how you're going to leave the stage either. It's like, because I do remember sort of like life being regarded as a play where you're the only one who doesn't remember their lines. But that's a thing that most people feel. And it's done on purpose. Because I think if people weren't so whipped from things like the education system and things like that, this kind of stuff just wouldn't happen. Period. And I think, and then what's more is like when we talk about the universe at large, no one really owns anything in the absolute sense. Like this body doesn't belong to me. This house that I'm renting doesn't belong to the people who own it. Nothing is really yours. If we're talking about in a very philosophical, metaphysical sense. And I think that's a really important thing to think about. And which would probably stop us being so pissy about not having enough money and that kind of thing. Not to say that money's not important, but if we make getting a good job so we can buy a house and then slowly expire and die, that's just no way to live. You can't take anything with you. So you may as well try to earn your money in such a way that is fulfilling. And I think one of the biggest things, actually, it was when I was watching like a Joe Rogan podcast with Maynard James Keenan. Like he said, you should do things without the expectation of compensation. Now, that's such a fucking cliche line, and it's constantly pushed around, but it's true. But what tied that together is he then said this, because if you do not do that, then you'll most likely find yourself being somewhere in a job where you're working way harder for way less. And that is a really fucking important thing to remember. Working way harder for way less? No, thank you. No one wants that. Everyone wants to have what they need. Anyway, moving on. In the land too, they think they own the land. All laugh and laugh. Still laughing. Stop it, you guys. It's too much. You make it sound like a game of Monopoly. Own the land. He laughs. Damn right. They bought it with money too. Money, huh? Money, you mean the green paper that you finish in the cardboard box that the game comes in? Exactly. Good. Now I understand. Macrocosm, microcosm people. Yeah, basically the game of Monopoly is no freaking different to how we experience it in the real world in a lot of respects. Exactly. Good. Now I understand. Well, the landlord bought it from the Cartwrights and the Crabtrees. They sold it to the Cartwrights. That was much earlier in the game. All gone. And here we are with all the sand and the jewels and the ivory that goes with it. Well, I think it's only right that we keep up the game. Why don't we buy it and sell it to each other? Yeah, good idea. It will pass the time. That's funny. And then after we get tired buying and selling, let's go in and listen to music in the study. Short pause. Charlie now leaps back up on the stairs. It really is beautiful, isn't it? Shimmering and glowing. O'Donnell. Strange. Yes, what? That they did it all. The stage is set, soaring down to the doors. You mean the way they made these ivory doors? Yes, look at them. How they worked. And how they cared. They must have cared. And the old Arab lamp there. Some old Arab sitting in his tent hammering it and designing the holes and lacework. And all of us. They made the scene and left. Left it for us. Huh. I think it's just talking about the design of this world. Like, the scene that we usually find ourselves in is actually set up for us and not by us. And in a sense, that's exactly how the universe is. The scene is set for us and not by us. Scene is set for us and not by us. Let's remember that, people, because that's actually quite important. Continuing. All right, let's continue. Pointing. Hey, why is that big door to the dining room shut? I hate shut doors. It's stuck. I tried to open it. How did it get closed in the first place? I shut it during the game. What game? The game where the boys were searching blind after the girls. I had the boys shut up in there while the girls were hiding and it got stuck. He bends over, shaking his head, wolf-like and muttering. Always a mistake. What? To shut people in. Always a mistake. The leader. Well, let's open the bars. Freedom. The three of us can push the gate back. Charlie motions. O'Donnell and Leary float over and they begin shoving and butting, trying to slide the door along its roller. It doesn't move. They try again, then stop, all leaning and pushing direct positions against the door. Well, we've been able to open lots of things up tonight, but this one we can't do. Yeah, can't win them all. We'll do it tomorrow when we're not under, when we feel stronger. He's frowning and gnashing his teeth, slowly hunched over. Well, I feel strong now, stronger than anyone in the world, and I want doors open. I can't stand to be cooped in. He starts pushing violently, savagely, his eyes gleaming and his teeth white against his brown cloth face. He can't move the door. Failure makes him angrier and he throws himself against the door again, growling. The coloured floodlights begin to dim and the room grows shadowy. Jewels lose their sparkle. The gem shadows are puddles of drab colour. Sand rivers turn into tan-stained carpet. The white ivory woodwork gleams unpleasantly bright. Charlie becomes an ungainly young man, silly with child's hat on his head. Three drug men in disheveled shirt, sleeves wandering. Round at the foot of the wide, sweeping staircase. The bearded cardinal had frozen, two-dimensional against the wall. Three Beckett clowns on a vast, empty stage, pointlessly milling around. I heard O'Donnell saying something about the teenage girls upstairs. I frowned. Bad thought. Keep the other planets out of the action. Charlie tilted his top hat down over his eyes, giggling at O'Donnell. No point in thinking about girls, O'Donnell. You're impotent under the drug anyway. O'Donnell scowled. Oh yeah, that's what you think. Talk about your own impotency, but it doesn't hold for me. I may turn them on. Charlie grinned. Why would the girls' mothers think if they knew they were drugged men roving around the house? The girls had never been safer, I said. All the reports say that drug turns sex off. Charlie laughed. That's right. Last night I could look at Rona and Joan and they were beautiful, but I had no lust and didn't even want to touch them. O'Donnell loosed a mocking laugh. The scene bothered me. I was feeling disjointed and rudderless. I felt a longing for some loving. I missed Joan and wanted to hold her close. Charlie and O'Donnell were arguing and the happy mood was lost. Life is pointless without love, I said. We're straggling, lost in an endless desert stages, all meaningless, but we have to do something. O'Donnell leered, speak up for yourself, I'm going upstairs. So, essentially, love under will. So, if there's no love, because the rapturous moment is when there's dissolution. That's sort of how sex sort of imagines it, because it's sort of a joyous sort of experience for both, generally speaking. And because it's the dissolution of two opposites. So love is the law, and it doesn't mean it in the sort of profane sense that we sort of think about it. So love is, basically unity. That's love. It's a bit like when someone finds their purpose and continues it and is unified with their purpose. That's love. When someone finds the right place to live and they love it, and like there's unity with their location, that's love. When there's unity with your family and all other kind of thing, that's love. Keep that in mind at all times, because that's dissolution. Dissolution is love. That's sort of the whole part of Christ being crucified on the cross, and the same thing with Dionysus and that kind of thing. Because when you look at Dionysus with his blood being turned into wine, it's sort of the alchemical allegory of like how we see alcohol and wine as like a thing of revelry, and it causes us to have transcendental ecstasy. Keep that in mind, fellas. Always. All right, let's go back. O'Donnell leered, "Speak for yourself. I'm going upstairs. It was crystal clear to me that life without love is an empty sham, senseless action, puppetry." Fuck, man. Yeah, that's definitely true. Well, I was just going back to what I was saying. If there's no love, there's no good life. Simple. But we have to do something. What had any point? I tried to use my mind, but there were no categories, no cliches, nothing inferential to hold on to. All loveless actions were ritual, empty gestures. Where is the real right program? What to do and why? Where to begin? How to build up a life of loveless action? I was standing in the hallway with my eyes closed, trying to find a philosophy, a way of meaning. What is life about anyway without love? I was pushing my mind back to some beginnings, to something basic. What action is any better than the other? What? Painful, clutching conflict. And then I reached something. Helping others, yes, that's the beginning. Everywhere there is helpfulness, and then we try to help. Yes, there's a difference that makes sense. It is better to help that hurt. The house is in a mess from the party. Rona will have to clean it up tomorrow. I'll do it tonight. That makes sense. I'll start with the kitchen. Charlie and O'Donnell were still bantering sarcastically at the foot of the stairs. The only loveless action that makes sense is to clean up the mess, I said. Matter of fact, that's a form of love. Come on out and help me. I left them and walked into the kitchen and started running water in the sink and rinsing dishes. The door opened and Charlie walked in. O'Donnell's gone upstairs. Upstairs? I thought of upstairs and I thought of the girls and the slumber party. Waves of guilt washed over me for having dragged my kids around from country to country, school to school, house to house. Susan missing friends and the warm, cozy routine schedule, and this was her first party, her first social event, and how excited she was, and nothing must mar it. No clowning around adults. Upstairs? Where did he go upstairs? To bed. I turned from the sink and looked at Charlie. My voice was harsh. Are you sure? Charlie's face reacting to my rough tones, a look of terror. Yes, well, I'm sure. That's what he said. My voice ominous. Well, I gave you the pills and it's your party and you're responsible. More terror. Gee, I'll go upstairs to check. I stood by the sink thinking again about the dear native tender daughter wanting to so much and normal stable growing up. I dried my hands and started upstairs. In the upper hallway, I could see the door to the girls' room open and Charlie's voice commanding. I was sick with the horror of it. O'Donnell, drugged, launching into the slumber party. Scandal. Susan's dream of social acceptance shattered. The girls were standing in the center of the room, bug-eyed. O'Donnell was lying on their bed. Charlie was bending over him, pulling his arm. Come on, O'Donnell, let's go downstairs. O'Donnell's mocking sneer. Nah, I don't want to go downstairs. I'm going to stay here with the girls. Charlie had put him up to a sitting position. Come on, O'Donnell, you can't be in here. Nah. Who says I can't? I do what I like. I grabbed his other arm and we yanked him to his feet. O'Donnell tried to throw us off, but we held on. Come on, O'Donnell. We don't belong here. This is the girls' party. Look at Susie. You love her, don't you? Do you want to spoil her party? I looked at Susan. She was watching us silently, curiously. We pulled O'Donnell out the door. He was struggling, but not too hard. We hustled him to the other end of the hallway and stopped. God damn it, O'Donnell. Knock it off. You have no right to butt in there. Charlie and I were towering over him. He was shrinking back from us, his eyes glaring, his lips drawn back in animal rage. I'd never seen such a visage of evil. He gnashed his teeth. He had shrunk in size and was crouching, possessed with malice. Shocking, awful evil. Cornered rat. Cornered rat was running through my mind. Nya, mocking whine. What are you to say? What is right? Maybe I know what's right for those girls. Pampered middle-class dears in there watching television and playing records, growing up to be miserable middle-class bitches. Holy fuck, dude. That's pretty heavy. Maybe the greatest thing that can happen to them in their life is for me to stir them up a little. Actually, that's also quite good because what really propelled me into action in the first place, I guess, is the fact that I really got into the mysteries after COVID. I was sort of already pushing towards it. But I didn't know that I was when I was reading philosophy and things like that. But with how, because there was this weird existential crisis that I was having, the mysteries, I pursued the mysteries much, much harder during the time of COVID. And even though I, as most people, hated the experience of sitting at home, doing nothing, going insane and all other kind of thing, it stirred me into action in other ways. And now I'm here. So sometimes stirring people's lives, even if they might hate you for it in the beginning, can sometimes be a good thing. Just make sure you do it in such a way that doesn't cause them to, unalive themselves or that other kind of thing. So just be careful, guys, when you're doing that kind of thing. O'Donnell's words hit my empty mind like hammer strokes. Stunned me. My God, maybe he's right. What real reason do I have to interfere? It's my own dirty mind. I was racking my brain looking for a moral rebuttal. I was on Mars, you understand, looking down at Earth, seeing in a flash the absurdity of social fears, taboos, the insane rituals that enslave mankind, the horrible middle-class fear, the fear. Do I want to descend to Main Street and protect tribal codes, identify with New England middle class, share their insane terror of nonconformity, their fear? I felt somehow that what O'Donnell was doing was wrong, but I couldn't tell him why. That goes back to the whole thing of, we're sort of pretty well entrenched in our ways of social conformity, our behaviors and that kind of thing. And we have this idea of what's right and what's wrong to do. Like, a good example is there was a woman I drank with who was uncontacted, Mama Celia. And what I found really interesting is that she had been drip fed ayahuasca as a child since she was a newborn, because both her parents were shamans. Now, in that kind of culture, that stuff is normal when you're talking about like shamanism and sort of some children being born into a shamanistic parents. Being born into it is something else. But if we were to hear something like drip feeding ayahuasca to a newborn in the West, there would be people would freak the fuck out. You know? I think it's all a matter of perspective when we look at practices of other cultures. Because there's definitely some things that we do over here in the West which is seen as absolutely disgusting and gross and absolutely barbaric to other tribes. The same way we see some things that they do barbaric, but they probably don't understand why we do what we do any more that we understand why they do what they do. So that's quite important to remember, fellas. Anyway, moving on. My mind had been perched off cliche and irrational belief. The beautiful, pure, empty mind faced with the existential moment, the moral crisis. Why shouldn't O'Donnell do what he wanted? Why could, in the long run, whether his plan would or would not be good? He might be the sharp Zen master to shake the girls out of middle-class shackles. Fuck, man. Like, it was weird because for a good part of this reading, I thought it was just going to be the same tired bullshit, but it's actually gotten interesting. It always gets good towards the end, I've noticed, with these trips. I turned puzzled to Charlie. He was standing, holding O'Donnell's arm. His face was dazed. Tell him, Charlie, why he shouldn't go into the girls' room. Charlie stared at me. I don't know why it's wrong for him to go there. I could tell that Charlie was going through the same moral search. Listen, Charlie, don't you think it's wrong for him to go back into the girls' room? Charlie nodded decisively. Yes, I know it's wrong. Well, Charlie, tell him why it's wrong. Again, the puzzled, helpless look. I can't tell him. I don't know why. I can't think of any reason. So that's, yeah, people always struggle to find reasons for some of even their own moral standings, or even if they do, they're usually built on top of other kinds of bullshit. Plunged back into the cosmic vacuum, my mind ran through 100 conventional cliched reasons and rejected them. O'Donnell was smiling with mean triumph. You see, you can't tell me I'm wrong. Do you want to set yourself up as the great moralist? Telling me about your miserable shoulds and shouldn'ts? O'Donnell made a move down the hall. Charlie and I grabbed him. Wait a minute. I know you shouldn't go there. I can't tell you why, but I know you're wrong. It was all perfectly clear to me. We were capitulating the moral struggles of the human race. We were the first and only man on Earth, and we were faced with the first ethical decision. Of course, we could use force. Charlie and I, the first cosmic police force, could bend his arms and drag him, the first and eternal criminal, away and overpower him by force. But why? What justification besides force? It was the first moral choice of my life. The first time I was faced with a fresh ethical crossroads. There was no learned easy motto to parrot. Ethics had to be built right from scratch, and had to be right not in terms of revealed dogma or fear of punishment, but in terms of the basic issue. Now, what was the basic issue? What is the unassailable first assumption? Suddenly it came to me. Moses on the mountain, a beautiful bolt of righteousness or rightness. Whatever. I tell you why you can't go into Susan's room, because it's her trip, her territory, her party, because she doesn't want you there. You have the right to do anything you want to, so long as you don't lay your trip on anyone else. No one has the right to force himself on someone else against his will. I was singing slowly with the great seriousness. When I finished, Charlie shouted, yes, of course, that's exactly right. You can't go there because the girls don't want you. Do your own thing. Let them do their thing. Tremendous flood of relief. So yeah, don't interfere with other people's will is basically the moral here. Tremendous flood of relief. The first ethical law had been forged. Moses smiles. There was a right not based on force, not based on fear, not based on a rational taboo or custom or dogma, but based on cellular equality. Mutual respect. Charlie and I were nodding at each other happily. O'Donnell was making a mocking growling noise, and suddenly he burst out of a grasp and started down the hall. We grabbed him, pulled him back, and around the corner, the north wing of the house, far away from the girls. O'Donnell was seething with futile rage. Again, the rat face and fangs, and his face even seemed grey and furry. We stood there blocking his way, arguing, you're cops, all cops are the same, telling me what I can't do. Charlie and I were reasoning with him. Why don't we go backstairs and have fun the way we were? Charlie was pleading. He had been swayed by O'Donnell's violent rebuttal. We got no place, we were spoilt sport, busybody policemen, and O'Donnell was going to have his own way. What can we do? Charlie was looking at me, pleading. Suddenly, I felt a moral impatience with Charlie. He was no longer the wise Olympian clown god. He was a whining, begging boy who had talked me into giving him the pills and caused all this mess. God damn it, Charlie. God damn it, Charlie. See what you did giving out the pills that way? I never wanted you to start this mess. We're the big shot and it's your responsibility. Now Charlie was mad. Oh, it's my responsibility, is it? Well, I quit. I resigned. You're twice my age and you're twice as smart as I am and you can handle it. I quit. Charlie dropped O'Donnell's arm and started down the stairs back to the kitchen. Good, said O'Donnell, and the cops quit and now I'm going back to see the girls. O'Donnell started down the north wing hallway and Charlie was moving down to the stairs. I was panicked. I couldn't follow O'Donnell and leap on him and wrestle him back, but I feared the noise. I was obsessed by the dread of disturbing the girls, fear of a scandal. I called down the stairs. Now I was pleading, okay, Charlie, it's not your responsibility as one friend to another, as one human being to another. Will you help me keep him away from the girls? Charlie looked up in my eyes. We both understood. Responsibility and roles were nonsensical, and Charlie had been right to see through this and reject it. I think there's something about that there. It's more about human responsibility rather than roles of superiors. It's basically the idea, like the absolute sovereignty of the individual should be the rule of the state. But sovereign individuals who are illuminated generally will be better people. It's just the way it is. So there's that. Yep. Charlie, but the appeal to him as man-to-man couldn't be dismissed. Charlie bounded back up and ran to the corner of the hall. He grabbed O'Donnell's arm. O'Donnell snarled and tried to push past. Charlie laughed, ominous, confident. Oh, little man, you want to get rough with me. Football Charlie was a giant pushing back the tiny foe. Don't try to pull any force, O'Donnell, because that just won't work. The three of us standing in the north wing hallway, O'Donnell sunk in bitter passivity. He was still muttering about cops. Need for someone present who was not under the drugs. We were still the only three men in the universe and we needed help. Then I thought of Rona. Charlie, go up and wake Rona. Tell her we need her down here badly. Charlie nodded and started down the hall. He walked sheepishly and I shouted to him. Again, saw about his giving out the mushrooms irresponsibly. Aha, you're guilty, aren't you? I was having to see him guilty at waking his wife and exposing her to this drug mess. I was happy because it made me right and him wrong. Rona's face was pinched and sour. She was blinking at the light. I was glad to see her. Rona, a terrible thing had happened. She was cool and businesslike. What's so terrible? I explained the situation. First of all, you must realize that the three of us had taken a bigger dose of these pills than anyone in the world. Rona was still cool, so what's so bad about that? And then I told her about the scene in the girls' room and how O'Donnell insisted on going back. Rona listened thoughtfully and we were all watching her. She became the great judge and lawgiver. Justice. Adjustment. Who says I shouldn't do what I want to do? But teenage girls, Susan's party. We were pleading our cases. Rona listened. The hallway was shadowy, a dim cave deep in the underworld. We finished. Finally, the silence breaks. Truth speaks. Of course she can't go in there, O'Donnell. And his voice coming back, mocking Rona's prim, proto-British nyanya. Why can't I go in there? What law says I can't and whose law? My tight muscles loosened when Rona had pronounced the verdict, but now they tightened again. Could she give a reason, a rule that went beyond the transient rules of the games that we all knew we didn't have to play? Yeah, that's a very interesting moral dilemma because we have to think about, like, we don't have to follow rules in the absolute cosmic sense. Okay? But there is some line that needs to be drawn when we're talking about rules that we know we don't have to play by. So you just got to think about that carefully. Very, very carefully. Always. And the reply, cool and so convincing. Impossible to think of going in there. O'Donnell, grown-ups don't join pajama parties. It just isn't done. Wham! What a judgment. What legal logic. Moses, take your stone tablets. Justice, Brandeis, forget your Blackstone. Rona's words, pinnacle of legal reasoning. Rona, just 2 years out of teenage herself, she knew the rule as relentless as 3 strikes you're out. Adults don't infringe on the trip of the adolescent. I was swinging clear and happy and loving Rona. Admiration, O'Donnell was stunned. You could see his tense, squirming body begin to relax. Looking down at the floor, nodding his head. We stood for a long time, and then Rona, briskly case dismissed, no nonsense voice said, all right. Oh, you come down to the kitchen, I'll brew up some tea and cookies. The calm, sure voice of the British Empire. Righto! Good show, well done. Now let's go have some tea. I butchered that accent, man. Rona started down the back stairs. Charlie and I stood back waiting for O'Donnell to go next. We were all thinking the same thing. O'Donnell made an impatient gesture and Charlie glanced at me and went down. I followed. We were all listening and turning our heads to see if O'Donnell would come. He paused at the top of the stairs. We walked slowly down. Then he took 2 steps and stood playing with us. I looked back and saw the sly, one-up grin, lips drawn back from the teeth. When I turned the corner of the stairs, there was silence, and then slowly O'Donnell came down. In terms of a human situation, one is handling wild, intractable people. In such a case, one's purpose will be achieved if one behaves with decorum. Pleasant manners succeed even with irritable people. True that. Got to be careful. Like, politesse is always important in life. As much as you want to fucking tell people when they're being stupid fucks and all that kind of thing, you still sometimes need to really balance it. So, yeah. Justice. Rona was putting the kettle back on the stove. Oh, wait, hold on. Oh, yeah, I already read that. Rona was putting the kettle on the stove. Hey, Rona, go up and check on the girls, will you? All right. But why don't you men start cleaning up this mess? I was ripped apart with guilt over lousy father, irresponsible stuff, and scared of O'Donnell. He had a wild gleam and was muttering to himself and moving with a clumsy madman plod. I feared him and sensed the insanity and understood the insanity and his confusion and sympathized with the confusion. Why? Who makes the rules? And why? And why do they hurt and humiliate? He just didn't understand the social game and was going through motions that were meaningless. Rinsing dishes, he wasn't happy about it. We couldn't hear him muttering and the dishes breaking. I felt the closest with him. We were all prisoners in a concentration camp of our own making, pushed and punished by senseless rules. You know, this is definitely like how I felt about school. You know, because like when you have senseless rules that don't seem to really make sense and they're almost there just to humiliate you and to hurt you, it's frustrating when you hear those, to follow those rules begrudgingly, and it crushes you. It's the same thing with that whole do as I say, don't do as I do sort of thing that we constantly hear from boomers. You know, and it's important that we should take into account just how senseless it is just to have rules for the sake of rules. And we should question those rules and question those boundaries. Why? You know? It's important, people. Pull your head out of your ass before it's too late. Think about what you're doing. Cool. We were all prisoners in a concentration camp of our own making, pushed and punished by senseless rules. I went over to get the garbage and quickly leaned over to him. 2 Jews in the Nazi prison. Look, I whispered, the whole world is crazy. The whole system is insane. But don't try to fight it now. Play along. We got ourselves into it. It's the only way. O'Donnell shot me an understanding glance and nodded. Yeah, you're right, he whispered. We'll play it out. I went outside to empty the can, saying to myself, yeah, the world is crazy. They want order, and I can't think of any better than order, so let's clean up. And any way someone will have to clean up if we don't, and that's doing good and makes some sense. When I came back, Charlie was standing by the stove, hands on hips, smiling and shrugging his shoulders. Look, O'Donnell, what are you doing? O'Donnell was cleaning up the table. He had a big brown bag and was dumping everything in the garbage. Food, glasses, silver, cigarette lighter. The voice stopped him and he stood holding the bag, grinning. It took the bag from him and laughed. O'Donnell just won't play the game, with that stupid look and moronic grin. He's making a joke of the whole business. It was kind of funny. Next, the roast chicken sitting on serving plates, untouched. O'Donnell took an ashtray and dumped it on the first chicken. Don't throw ashes on my fresh roast chicken. There's no celestial housemaid. He was wrong, but why? In the great cosmic scheme of things, why not throw silver in the garbage and ashes on the fresh roast chicken? Why? I stood there holding the garbage sack in my hands, brow furrowed. Why? Why not? Why? Then I understood. It's okay to not play the game if you are willing to deal yourself out of the game. Don't play house if you don't want to play house. But don't live in the house and expect the rewards of the house game. That is fucking incredible, guys. Holy shit. So yeah, if you're playing a certain game, maybe don't get pissy when the rules aren't always exactly in your favor or the rules don't play in a certain way. Now, that's easier said than done because, in a sense, we are born into a game we don't really want to play when we think about some of the rules, right? Whether it's like certain laws, depending on where you're from, whether it's the China, US, Australia, Canada, South America, doesn't matter. But the premise is the same. So I would actually sort of talk about it again. So it's okay to not play the game. If you're willing to deal yourself out of the game, don't play house if you don't want to play house, but don't live in the house and expect the rewards of the house game. You know? Yeah, so if you don't want to play house, don't go in the house. If you don't want to play poker, if you don't want to play by the rules of poker, don't play poker. I think this is like a really fucking important thing for me to sort of integrate as well, actually, because I have a habit of doing that. Yeah, because so far this whole trip from Doc Timothy Leary has just been incredible, man. Like half this shit I didn't fucking think about. He just manages to pull it out of thin air on all of his mushroom trips with other people. Yeah, and maybe also maybe tripping around the right people isn't always that bad. Anyway. Okay. But don't live in the house and expect the rewards of the house game. Yeah, O'Donnell, sure. Empty ashes on the chicken if you don't mind eating chicken with ashes. But don't infringe on others' games. Don't throw out Charlie's lighter and the family's silver. And don't break up the teenage girl's game. Break up, destroy. I remember him slashing the lamp cord with the knife and spitting on the carpet. Fuck. Suppose your game is destroy. Okay. This is going to be interesting. I thought of all the poor kids who had been left out of the rich games they saw all around them. Why? Explain it. Why? Because most games, keep others out. Yeah? Not because the kid can't play well enough, not because he isn't willing to learn, but because no reason. So they can create the game of destroy. If you play the game of keep out, then you provoke the game of destroy. Opposites generate each other, ladies and gentlemen, once again. Play the game of keep out, you play the game of destroy. You generate the game of destroy. So you got to really think about half this stuff, man. Like, because when we talk about morality and contradiction and all that other kind of thing, you got to always think about what's happening on the other side of the coin. Always. And keeping that in mind can always be quite difficult. I hope you guys can't fucking hear that jet that's around my house because I live near an airfield. So that's why you could probably hear it. Anyway. Okay, so break up, destroy. But because no reason. So if you play the game of keep out, then you provoke the game of destroy. Smash the middle class, down with the rich, slash the Cadillac tires, loot, trample the Roman villa, rape the Alabama white woman, jettison the landlord's silver, mangled the pajama party of the sleek, smug suburban teenage girls we all want to violate that fence that keeps us out. Yeah, so some games you just get kept out of, and that's a frustrating thing to think about. How close are we? I think we're close to getting to the end of this trip. Heaven and the lake show a difference of elevation that adheres in the nature of the two. Hence no envy arises. Among mankind also there are necessarily differences of elevation. It is impossible to bring about universal equality, but it is important that differences in social rank should not be arbitrary and unjust, for it is, if this occurs, envy and class struggle are the inevitable consequences if, on the other hand, external differences in rank correspond with differences in inner worth. And if inner worth forms a criterion of external rank, people acquire acquiescence and order reigns in society. I hope I didn't get shadow banned for saying harpe, man. Fuck. Because YouTube's fucking silly with its algorithms sometimes. It's so dumb. Rona was back. I had visions of outraged virtue, drugged men wrestling and lurching through the pajama party. What would they tell their fierce social mothers? Were they terrified? Was Susan crushed? Rona was calm and casual. Oh, they're doing fine. Pillar fights and rock and roll, and only worried about when we'll make them turn off the record player. Rona was at one end of the table, O'Donnell at the other, Charlie and I facing each other. I wanted Rona's approval for something, for everything. Oh goddess, hear my story. Rona was sleepy, but resigned to the role and interested in my approval and my wisdom. That fucking jet, man. I was ready to discuss how we have to leave Newton. Drugs at a teenage party. Guilt. Rona was worried about the tea. Charlie, you know you must scald the pot before you put the tea in. Wise words. 500 years of solid empire. That great little island and the game that invented and believed in, how they made it stand up. Society is a crazy, made-up game. Yeah, true. It is a made-up game. And we don't realize we're playing. It's sort of like that Truman Show sort of stuff, where where the main protagonist, Truman, he doesn't realize he's a part of a reality TV show, and he's the only one who's aware of everything that's going on around him. He's not the only one who's not aware that he's on a show. And that's sort of the same sort of premise when we talk about other things. So, riddled with confusion and fear and conflict and guilt, and no one's gods come through, and when the whole thing begins to fall apart and you know it's falling apart, then comes the clear, calm voice. Scald the pot, okay. Somewhere there's an ancient game which keeps going, and at the moment I was glad for it. The domestic routine, the kitchen, the boiling of water, the washing, the eternal soft voice of the young mother naively bore with male speculation and male struggle, the soothing center rhythm of family life, the right to heal wrong. Treading upon the tiger does not bite the man. Success. Is that it? Come on. I believe that is it, ladies and gentlemen. Oh my god. Stop it. There we go. So, Trip 6 is next. The blueprint to turn on the world. That's a very interesting one. But that was an interesting one about balance, morality, justice, and all other kinds of things. And that was probably one of the more thought-provoking ones as well. Man, this book has been incredible so far. For real. So, thank you everyone for watching the Yours Truly Baphomet YouTube channel and the Dr. Timothy Leary High Priest podcast. Please like, share, subscribe to my Substack. And I will see you guys next time.